down. And execution needs to be very nimble and responsive to what is going on in the market. And so that's VUCA, and we're going to focus on the ambiguity aspect of it. I want to read you the definition of the ambiguity. So, ambiguity is defined as an unfamiliar environment where your existing expertise and prior experience are not sufficient to meet new challenges. So basically, you find yourself in a place where you're ill-equipped to respond to what is required of you, because it's also new and unfamiliar and can be stressful. So I invite you to take out your worksheet that you hopefully had a chance to print out, but if not, it doesn't matter. Any sheet of paper will do. And take just a couple of minutes to jot down a workplace transition that brought much ambiguity. And it can be reorg, acquisition, any type of change that affected you and resulted in ambiguity. And if you feel comfortable sharing it with others, it always enriches everyone's experience in this session when people share. Then you can put the description of that transition into the chat. And I'm looking at the chat, and thank you to S for educating me about this idiom, and thank you for the link to the Cambridge Dictionary. I'm not a native English speaker, and there are for sure gaps in my knowledge of idioms and many, many other things. So thank you. It's always fun to learn something. Not a single change, but a constant shift in splitting up and merging teams and communicating those changes to dependent teams. Oh, good. I don't feel so bad that I didn't know that it was a idiom. Okay, I see examples of organizational changes that resulted in ambiguity coming in. Layoffs and management changes, for sure. And corporate reorg. Yeah, those result in ambiguity. Other things that result in ambiguity, as I think of like workplaces that I was at, is changing location. Changing location, so nothing may change in terms of like who the person reports to or the team or the type of work they're asked to do, like all exactly the same. But if you move them from their office to like an open workspace, like a low cubicle kind of shared work design workspace, some are lost. For some, it's very difficult to adapt. So it's also that physical change that can throw people off. KB, work prioritization confused by back and forth on hiring a leader for the team. Yes. Change in system used to document and access and assess for eligibility, SK. Hi, SK. We share the same initials. I'm Susanna Katsman. Okay, great. Thank you for those examples. If you've got an example, it's not too late to share it. This is great. Change in role and assignments. Thank you, Cece. So I want to ask you to respond to a quick poll. Oh, no way! Another Susanna. Hi, Susanna. This is great. This doesn't happen too often. Yeah, please respond to this poll, and this will give me an idea of the makeup of this group in terms of how many are individual contributors and how many are leading or managing others, and how many are in some other situation. So please take a moment to respond. And there's a bit of a delay, usually. So I'm going to be very patient with this and see what else came into the chat. Ongoing transformation, risking turning well-progressing team into shared services office via centralization equals degradation of our position, but it is still unclear and confusing. Yes, it is. Sounds like a lot. And sounds like the outcomes, the potential outcomes may not be welcome by you and the team, but I could also be reading into it. And SK say, no, there aren't very many of us. I know, but it's kind of nice. It's nice to be unique. Okay. Okay, so a little over half of you responded to the poll. Thank you. I love the participation here. It's really great participation, which makes for better session, if nothing else, in terms of like when I get the results of the pulse check or the poll, it's statistically significant, if nothing else. Okay, OA dropped the question into the Q&A. Working as an architect, creating prototypes, what advice do you have for me? I would need to know a little bit more about the situation that you are in and what kind of advice would be helpful. So let me know. Okay. I'm gonna switch to results window. Okay. Interesting. So about a third of you are individual contributors. And then lead projects that involve other contributors, and team lead without formal supervisory responsibility and formally managing one or more employees. So those are all groups of people, and this is a sizable portion of this group that are in a position to help others navigate organizational changes and ambiguity. And of course, in order to do that well, you have to do that well for yourself. And maybe it comes naturally to you, which is great. And if not always, then I hope you will take some information from this course that will help you do so. And then initiating or leading change efforts in my organization. Okay, so 11-12%. So you have considerable power then to make decisions related to what's going to happen. And no one is self-employed, which is kind of unusual. And very few of you are in between jobs, which is nice to see, because there are periods of time when I would facilitate the session during the pandemic, and the in-between jobs would be like very sizable. So it's nice to see that it has gone down. Thank you for responding, everyone. So the session is based on the transitions model of William Bridges, and this is the book. And what makes this model different is that it focuses on transition as opposed to change. So change brings ambiguity. Change is like all the things that you guys gave as examples in the chat. Like corporate reorg, and this happens and that happens. That's like the change. It's external. It happens outside of us. But the transition is internal. The transition is how we react in our hearts and minds. And the interesting thing about transition is that it can start to happen. You can start to have an internal reaction to the change before the change takes place. So as soon as you learn that you are going to have a new manager, and maybe it's like the third new manager in the last 3 months, you're going to have an internal response to it, whether you decide to voice it or not. So this is where the transition begins. And then transition also outlasts the actual change. So once that new manager, let's say, is in place, or that reorg was completed, or whatever other change actually happened, but we are not done processing what it means for us and what we need to do differently as a result of it. Like there is still stuff going on, like thinking, feeling, all of that, long after the change has completed. We are still processing the change internally. In this model, transition begins with an end. Something has to end in order for something else to begin. And change begins with an end. And the interesting thing is that people, when they say, those that say, I fear change, or I don't like change, I don't cope well with change, it's not so much the change that they're having a hard time with, it's the ending. It's the ending of something that was familiar and comfortable and maybe tied to the identity. So it's the ending that is challenging for people, not so much the change itself. So what is involved in stage 1, ending, losing, letting go? A lot of different emotions. They're listed on the slide. And the thing is that not everyone going through change is going to experience all of these emotions. And not everyone is going to experience them in that particular order. But many people are going to experience at least some of those emotions. And the one that's last, it should probably be listed first, is a sense of loss. It's very prevalent at this stage. And people who don't experience many emotions in response to knowing something is about to end, they may still experience a sense of loss. So here are some tips for managing this stage. So accept the change. I know it's easier said than done. You don't have to agree with it and you don't have to like it. Just accept that it is happening. And it can help to acknowledge your resistance. Because the expectation that you should just go with it and embrace it and, you know, see the opportunity in it and adapt to it. Not everyone can do that easily. And some people experience a lot of resistance to change and they need to be in that place for a little bit at least before they can move on and do what's required of them. And understanding the emotions involved is also very important, and understanding that they're normal and different people are going to react to changes differently. And for those of you who are managing others, whether formally or informally, you can help others by letting them know that it's okay to not be wild about the change and to feel some resistance to it and to think of different arguments as to why it's not a good idea. But at the end of the day, if the change is not your decision, it's still going to happen. And understanding the emotions involved can also be very helpful if you are managing others, because it can kind of expedite the process of getting with the program if someone who is either a senior to them or maybe just managing the project that they're involved in kind of like gets them at this point in time. I remember I was part of the team that was overseeing database system conversion. This was a number of years ago at a major institution, and it was like a multi-million-dollar kind of project. And one of my colleagues, she cried in meetings about the system going away, even though she understood very well all the reasons why it had to go away. It wasn't serving the needs of the business. And she understood all the benefits of the new system that was going to be put in place. And yet she was very attached to the old database system because she had to figure out all these workarounds to make it work, because the system wasn't designed for what we were doing. So we had to adapt to the system. And yet that's what made it so difficult for her to let go, which of course eventually she did, and she did great, and she was just invaluable to the project. But it was difficult for her, that loss, and that loss of something that she invested a lot of work in, and there were emotions involved. A lot of times there are emotions involved. Okay, more tips for how to help others let go. Identify who is losing what. that's helpful because in the absence of information, people make things up and start rumors, and that's not helpful at all. So as you may not know everything, but to the extent that information is available to you, you want to share it, push it down. Don't be surprised at overreaction, because think about it. What is overreaction? I kind of described an overreaction in my colleague who cried. Well, overreaction is when someone reacts more than we would expect them to, or we ourselves react more than we expect ourselves to. But it's a reaction, like overreaction is kind of judgy. And it does happen. Give people information and do it again and again. So I bolded that one because I was told by managers that I was conducting this session with at Harvard that this is probably the most important piece. And I know that it's not easy to be providing information to your team on a consistent basis. I've heard from some managers like, yeah, I would love to give my people information and do it again and again, but these days I'm the last to know what's happening. So I get it. And if you haven't had any updates, you still want to tell your team, I haven't heard anything new since I updated you last time a week ago or whenever. And that's going to, again, keep them from making stuff up, because when there's a vacuum of information, people sometimes make things up, and it can sabotage change efforts, it can sabotage other things, relationships, and so forth. So as much as possible, help people to feel settled with either knowing information and what's happening and what's going to happen next, or knowing that information is not available right now. It seems like nothing has been changed or made known since the last time updates were provided. And let people take a piece of the old way with them. So this is like some token, some souvenir of an old way. Maybe there is like something that symbolizes the team that is about to be disbanded, or there is a logo or signature or something symbolizing that which people are identifying with. And it just helps to honor the past. Maybe, some teams take a picture of themselves in front of the coffee shop where they used to hang out a lot, and that is their token. But it just helps to honor the past. Sometimes when there are organizational changes that are going on, the tendency is to be like, oh, the old way was just terrible and things are going to be so much better once we have this, reorg, acquisition, whatnot. But the thing is, like, the past is the foundation that we're building on. So let's not denigrate the past. And it can be demoralizing for people who gave a lot of themselves to building on what is now becoming the past, when others are putting it down. So honor the past. And we're about to dive into a new stage. And before we do that, I just want to see what's happening in Q&A. GD, how does acceptance feel if one does not agree and or like it? It feels to me like helplessness and giving up. Sure, not fighting the change saves energy. Is that accepting the change? Can you please say more about how to feel accepting the change? Oh, that is such a rich question. Thank you, GD. Yeah, so what you're describing, like helplessness and giving up, oh my gosh, things are coming in so fast. I wonder, we don't often use the word surrender in a corporate world, but that's what it can feel like. There's this change coming at me. I don't agree with it. I don't like it. But I make a decision to not resist. I'm just going to surrender to what is. And people do that for different reasons. Some people I need the paycheck and the benefits, and I don't want to go looking for another job right now. So that's a common one. Or they genuinely like other aspects of the work, and this is like the thing that they just need to get through. And then they can return to focusing on what actually brings them satisfaction, maybe joy. But I think especially for people who are used to having autonomy as individual contributors, or having some formal authority as managers and leaders, it is super hard to surrender. It is super hard to accept the change, because it feels like my power is being taken away from me, or I'm letting them take my power away from me if I accept it. But I think acceptance and surrender, or whatever term might work for you, again, it doesn't mean that you like it. It doesn't mean that you agree with it. It doesn't mean you're in support of it. It means that you have good reasons to stay where you are and go with it. That's all it means. So let me know if that's helpful. Or if not, then you can ask it another way, and I'll give it another attempt. Okay, so OA. I'm a senior software engineer working with junior engineers in a government role. A new company took over the contract, and I also moved to a new home. Okay, so I am getting that there are major changes happening at work with the new company taking over the contract, and perhaps you're being asked to do things differently, or priorities are changing, I'm guessing here. And you move to a new home. So this is a personal change, and it can be a huge, huge adjustment as well. And I am still not sure. Oh, there's another one. How do you accept personality conflict with the new manager? Personality conflict with a new manager is a reason that some people choose to move on and not work with that new manager. And those who choose to stay, they have to accept it. And they have to learn to perhaps communicate differently. Usually if someone who has figured out how to work well with someone that they were in conflict with, it is because they really gave some thought to what is important to the other person, what are they looking for, what are their preferences, how do they like to engage, how do they not like to engage, and they've made adjustment to how they communicate with that person and how they engage with that person. And some people adjust very easily. They're like chameleons. I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them. I don't have a very good sense of other people, and I can adjust to a degree if they're different, but any major adjustment takes such a toll on me. So, for example, like, I like to go into like some amount of detail when describing the issue or the solution that I'm proposing. And if I'm presenting it to someone who like can't stand to hear any detail, like it's difficult. Like I can be very succinct, but it leaves me feeling like I didn't give them enough information for them to like make an informed decision to approve or disapprove or anything else. So, yeah, like to work well with someone with whom you have a conflicting style or values or something like that. I don't know your personality. It could actually be fun for you, like a puzzle to figure out, or it may be like draining. So, let me know. And you love your new home and other aspects of your job. That's great, OA. Okay, let me see if I can respond to someone else. Yeah, oh my gosh. So there's a really good suggestion here. The person asked me not to read it, but I still want to put it out there because I think it could be valuable to others. I'm just not going to identify the person by their initials, but it's basically a request to pick up the pace at which I talk, I guess. So I want to do a pulse check and please give me thumbs up. Like, yes, I would find it helpful, Susanna, if you picked up the pace. And give me thumbs down if you're like, your pace is working just fine for me. Keep going as you have been. So thumbs up, please pick up the pace. Thumbs down, keep things as they are. And I'm going to go back to Q&A right now. Another example of taking the past with you. Oh gosh, it's hard to give an example because teams are so different and people are so different, and they just figure out their own way of doing that. And so I could say sometimes it's like that example I gave of people moving from offices to cubicles. Sometimes they want to take like a piece of furniture or something that is on their desk or something like that, like a very, very physical artifact. And sometimes, it's a recording of something. Maybe it's a little video of a celebration they had as a team. And sometimes they take a special trip and then they bring something back from the trip, like a group photo. I don't know. I think it's invitation to be creative and come up with something that's meaningful to, if not all, then many team members. Okay. GD, surrender like capitulation. Okay, thank you for explaining. It's really difficult to grasp. Okay, good. I'm glad my explanation was helpful. Surrender doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good at all if you're not like in a habit of surrendering to what's coming at you. But I also think in terms of like martial arts, where there is your opponent is coming at you with force, and good martial artists, they kind of like use the opponent's force to the advantage to like maybe turn and then come back at them at in some other way, or get away like from the harm's way. So it's sort of like they're surrendering to it, but it's a very purposeful and intentional surrender. I recently started taking tango lessons, and one of my challenges is that like I'm trying to lead my partner, and my teacher's like, Susanna, stop leading. You have to like give him your weight and lean into him, trust that he can handle it. So that's like the kind of surrender that's very difficult for me. And just in general, trusting that like if I don't do anything here, if I don't take charge, it's going to be okay, is very difficult. Okay, thank you for responding to the pulse check. So majority rules, and a lot of you want me to pick up the pace. I'm going to try to do that, and feel free to let me know how I'm doing, because clearly my natural pace is not fast-paced, but I do want to accommodate you guys. So let me know throughout the session how I'm doing with that. And thank you for responding to the pulse check. Okay. Oh, you dance tango too? Cool. I'm glad my example worked. Okay, very good. Thank you for your questions in Q&A, everybody. This is excellent. We are on to the neutral zone. How do you know when you're in a neutral zone? So the old is gone and the new is not fully operational. This can be very disorienting for people who like order and predictability and rely on the precedent and all of those things. Feels like no one knows what they should be doing, because chances are at least some people don't know what they should be doing. They haven't had practice with the new way yet. There's still many pieces that have to be figured out. And state of limbo, as I said, disorderly and confusing. And again, there are people that thrive in that state of limbo because they're like, cool, get to experiment, get to figure things out, get to get away with some things I wouldn't otherwise. And for others, it's uncomfortable. The neutral zone is where there is the most ambiguity and confusion, and it feels like topsy-turvy. So the inner critic can really start piping up in those of us who are like, I should know what I'm doing by now. I should be perfect. Like, I'm not happy with my performance. And our inner critic is going, why can't I get it together? It's too hard. This is just not working. And the neutral zone is not a time to be hard on ourselves. And here's an image that I like to use in relation to the neutral zone. Like when I see this germinating under the ground, to us, it looks like nothing's happening, right? It's just like the ground and there's nothing happening. We don't know what's happening underneath, but there's like a ton happening underneath. There's this miraculous process that eventually we will see above ground, but this is what's happening in ambiguity, in a neutral zone. There are ideas, there are processes, there are certain developments that are happening, and it's just difficult to recognize them at the time. They may not be visible. They may not take the form that we're used to recognizing. And so we think that not enough is happening, but there's actually a ton happening, and we have to let it be. We can't disturb this, because if we, like, what happens when you start digging up the seed every few days to see how it's doing, you're not going to get good results. Okay. Managing the ambiguity of the neutral zone. So this is what I said in the beginning, that it's not so much the change that people fear, but uncertainty and disruptions to normalcy, the losses that they have sustained. And the losses look different for everyone. Like some people, you know, it kills them. It kills them if the position is reclassified and the title is no longer as impressive. And or they take away their fancy office. And even though everyone's fancy office is going away, it is still like not acceptable to them. So if you think like, what are you complaining about? You still are getting paid and you still have your job. Well, yes, that's true. But to that person, it's very subjective, and perhaps they feel like they're losing the status and certain prestige and respect if other things are going away. And this is a ripe time to be innovative and creative, yes, because when everything is up in the air and when the normal things and kind of channels of approval have been disrupted, and folks at the top are like busy dividing up the power or whatnot, it's a really good time to experiment with something. It's a really good time to like prototype a new product or improve an existing process or pilot something, because chances are in the midst of the neutral zone, you're not going to have to cut through as much red tape to get it approved, and you can really practice being innovative and creative. So here is another tip. Oh, you're enjoying the pace. Thank you. So good to know. Well, at least one of you is enjoying the pace. Good. Although it is not comfortable, do not rush through this stage. So remember the seed on the ground. You can't rush it. It takes as long as it takes to germinate, and we're not going to help it by like checking up on it. So backpedaling to the past or speeding through to the new can jeopardize the change efforts. When we are in a neutral zone, it can be uncomfortable, because if a person is uncomfortable with the unknown, and there's a lot of unknown in the neutral zone, they're gonna want to be back in a space where things are known. And the past is when things were known, and the future is when they think things are going to be known. So, but it's really important to kind of stay in the discomfort of the neutral zone and trust the process, trust the change process, trust the change effort. And that is the only way that one can get to a better result in the future. And I know lots of change efforts fail, so it's not guaranteed, but rushing forward or backpedaling will for sure kill whatever chances the change effort may have to succeed. Adjust expectations around productivity. A lot of people are not going to be very productive because it takes a lot of like mental resources just to cope with ambiguity and just to cope with these unfamiliar circumstances that one may, still make the to-do list that they always used to make and get like maybe 2 things done at best. So, it's about prioritizing differently. It's about delegating differently. It's about just figuring out what is absolutely non-negotiable, must get done. What can we let go of? What may no longer need to be done. We had this exercise in one of my past jobs, which was called Kill a Stupid Rule. So think about something that you may be doing. Like I was running some reports at one point, and I was like, I'm not sure anyone's looking at those reports. Like I send them out, I never hear anything. Do they inform any decisions? Like, do they serve any purpose? I don't know. I'm not going to make a big announcement that I'm doing away with the reports, but I'm just going to used to send them every week. I'm going to send them every 2 weeks. Does anyone notice? No. Every month. Did anyone's head explode? No. I'm just not going to do them anymore because clearly no one's looking at them. So some things can just go away like that. Other things may be modified in frequency or scope, and other things may be postponed. Like, yeah, this has some value, but right now we don't have the bandwidth, and it's going to have to wait. Create temporary solutions to the temporary problems found in a neutral zone. So that means don't hardwire any of the solutions in. It's best to think Velcro. Just Velcro, we can change it very easily. And those solutions tend to require less investment in terms of time and effort and money. It's just a Velcro solution, a temporary solution for a temporary problem. When we don't need it anymore, we're going to undo it. When we need to tweak it, it's going to be much easier to tweak it than if it's hardwired somehow. Feeling stuck, don't fester, utilize available resources. So if your company and many larger size companies have resources such as employee assistance programs, where the employee assistance program can connect you to, actually depending on what it is, any resource you need. There are mental health related resources, there are legal advising resources, there are financial planning, whatever is making you stressed at this time, whether it's related to work or outside of work, utilize that resource. And if you're not sure what your company has, you can always ask your human resources if you trust them. If they violated your confidence in the past, maybe you don't ask them and find another way to find out what's available to you. But it's good to have supports during challenging times. And another reminder to experiment and innovate. Okay. So please turn back to your worksheets and jot down what helped you stay grounded during that time where you were experiencing a lot of ambiguity. Take a couple of minutes to do that. And put it in the chat if you're comfortable.